This little Stradic looks okay, but it's had a little bit of a rough life. Seen a bit of water. It's almost like someone's been using it for fishing or something like that, taking it near the beach. Imagine that. $1,000 size, so it's kind of a little bit tiny, but as you can see here, it doesn't wind too good. And I suspect that a lot of that's going to come from under the anti-reverse clutch, around the pinion bearings sort of area. So first we'll get some tape on that line to keep it clean, because we know braid just sucks up oil and grease off your fingers, so keep it clean from the start, and it's all good. I should add also that this tape, while it looks just like electrical tape, and that's what it's sold as, is the cheap version, and I use it for a couple of reasons. First one is it's cheap. The second one is it doesn't have a lot of adhesive on it, so when you use it in this situation and you take it off down the track, it doesn't leave globs of adhesive on your line, and that's a good thing. You end up with a clean line with no grease on it. So we get into the drag now, and very simple drag on these little reels, just a single felt drag washer, and the customer doesn't want it replaced. He says it's just fine for now, which is okay. We'll go with that. That's it there, and it's a little squashed, but it's not too bad. I would have just replaced it because they're cheap, but anyway, we'll just do what the customer wants and go with it. You know, it can easily be replaced down the track. So next we've got to get this spool support off. They're the adjusting washers, adjusting shims for the spool height, so that you can adjust your line lay. They just push on. The next thing is to take out the support, and there's the tiniest little grub screw in this, which you need to make sure that there's a correct size screwdriver bit for this. You'll see, there it goes, falling down there. Teeny tiny little thing, but it does the job. And this slides off, and we'll get a clean up, but it's not in bad condition. There's no salt too much to worry about there. Next comes off this rotor nut retainer, just a couple of little Phillips head screws hold that on. It doesn't sort of bear any load, but it does prevent the rotor nut from accidentally unscrewing, and it's also sort of a better aesthetic piece than a little brass nut. Obviously plastic tweezers are not up to the job. I use those plastic tweezers for a good reason. I'll explain that later, but off comes this little seal. It's just a rubber seal, and the rotor nut now is exposed, and it's a left-hand thread, so righty loosey, lefty tighty, or anyway, it's a left-hand thread, so you have to undo it the other way, and it is fairly clean, no corrosion there, which is good. That's a good start. and the rotor should just wriggle off fairly easily, which it does. And even at this point there doesn't appear to be much corrosion yet. The line roller is still rolling, but it's very likely needs a bearing replacement, so we'll get to that. And you can get the handle off at this point. You could take it off earlier, but at this point you want to take the handle out because the anti-reverse clutch is still in there, and that helps you to unwind the handle. Again, not a great deal of corrosion, not a hugely free spinning knob, but that's not a big deal. There's corrosion that we're looking for and there's none there, so up to this point, not too bad. So we'll get this rear protector fashion piece come salt trap off with a little star head screw and slide that off. Not too bad. So we still haven't found yet any evidence of the problem with this reel, although that will come. Take off the dust cap, the handle screw cap they call it, and yeah, still no evidence. Friction ring, which just sits in a slot there, comes off fairly easily. And put that to one side as well. Next up, a big moment in most reel strip downs is opening up the gear case. There's 4 screws in these plugs, 2 Phillips head screws down here which are hidden by the rear protector, and 2 little star head screws which I imagine is just for aesthetics because they look a little cleaner than the Phillips head. Needs 2 different screwdrivers to get the side case open. Thank you Shimano for that. But here's what it is. Fairly simple procedure. Still no obvious signs of corrosion yet, and I'm sure in here it will be all corroded away. No. Okay. This bearing though is very likely dodgy. So we'll pop that out and we'll give it a spin. And I put bearings on just on a pair of tweezers like that, roll it on my finger and you can feel it straight away, and you can usually hear it, but you can feel it. Yeah, no good. Replace this one. So out with the main gear, just slides out. Doesn't appear to be any, no excessive wear on those teeth. I think we'll get a little bit of extra light on there just to make sure. And yep, serviceable main gear. No replacement necessary. So out comes the auto trip ramp. It just sits in its little slot there, just a plastic piece. No drama with that. Check for up and down. You've probably noticed here the fairly typical factory level of lubrication in there. It's almost at 0, and it's quite staggering really. You've got metal on metal parts there on that oscillating slider with almost zero lubrication. So we'll pop out this slider guide bar. See the little O-ring on the end of it there, don't lose that. Flip that over and just check out the pawl, make sure the oscillating pawl is moving. Yep. Again, almost zero lubrication under there. I don't get it. I just don't get it. And that bearing appears to be pretty solid, as in solidly not moving. Getting now into the area where I think most of the big issues are. So you'll notice here there's 4 screws. Don't undo that one there. So we'll get these 3 out and the anti-reverse clutch will come off. Should come off with a little bit of force probably. And there we go, straight away. First glimpse of rust. Rubber O-ring, and yeah, fairly solidly rusted out there, which is kind of typical area for most spinning reels to go. Yeah. So there's our issue with this reel, or our major issue anyway, apart from the bearing issues. That's fairly rusted up and beyond repair. That's not savable. So this AR clutch and the sleeve are going to require replacement. These bits here, the screws obviously remain, and this little ring on the top there, that will be reused, but this bit here, that's gone. As will be that sleeve in the centre sleeve there. Pop the pinion gear out, and then out with the main shaft assembly. Check it out, not too bad. No damage to that. Let's get to this other side bearing now with a micro adjuster, because it's a bit solid in there. I think it's suffered the same fate as the anti-reverse clutch. I think it's got a little bit of water incursion, and might be terminal for that bearing, I think. We'll chuck it on the spinner. Yep, nothing, not moving at all. Out with that one. Right, let's get this pinion gear assembly apart. Well, looks a little bit crusty there, so we'll put it in this is a watchmaker's vise, just off, I don't know, Amazon or somewhere like that. Quite effective for doing it. Now just give it a tap with the plastic hammer, just on the end, just gently on the end there, because we don't want to damage any of those threads. That you can see is out. This top pinion bearing also, yeah, obviously out. Not even going to test that, I don't think. No. Now this bottom pinion bearing is also gone, but these are sometimes a little bit tricky to get off. So you've got to be careful if you plan on reusing your pinion gear that you don't damage the bottom of those teeth, those gears on the pinion. When you're doing that there, just be careful not to put too much force to bend the bottom of those teeth. It should be fine. Now this little washer here is a spring washer. It's got a slight curve in it, and we'll be reusing that. Just clean that up and it will be just fine. The pinion gear also looks fine, so we'll clean that. That, not so much. That's out. So now we're going to get a look at this line roller. Now these are, the bearing in these is not replaceable. They're designed that way so that you have to go out and spend 20-25 bucks on a new line roller. Fortunately for this guy on this occasion, this one is still fine, so we'll leave it in there and we'll reuse it, we'll lube it, and when they go, what I do is I replace this unit with a composite unit. It's made up of 3 different parts, and then you can replace the bearing in it next time, so that makes it simpler and cheaper to service the next time. So now we're into a reassembly, and as you can see we've already put in the main shaft, the oscillating slider bar, and a suitable amount of lubrication, of grease in there. So put in the bottom pinion bearing. Just be careful when you put these tiny bearings in, or any bearing, but especially the tiny ones, to push on the outer race. Don't push on the inner race, otherwise bearing is gone. Needs a new one. Pinion gear on. Just make sure it's got freedom of movement, which it has. Top pinion bearing, which is also new. All these bearings are new, by the way. Moves nicely now compared to before. Next we want an O-ring, which is just a form of water resistance. It doesn't really do a lot, but you know, anything is better than nothing, right? Just slits in its own little groove there. On with the new anti-reverse clutch, and there's a locating lug under there which you have to line up. Actually there's 3. Get them lined up and that's fine. Push that tube or inner ring in. Get the top plate out and the screws. Should be 3 of them, plus the one that's already in there. That's the one that we talked about before that I said you don't undo. Leave that one in place. So that is sort of self-aligning because of that one that's already in there. It just needs to line up in one of those little vacant slots. And then in with the 3 main screws, which will hold that in place and also hold the pinion gear and bearing assembly in place. So now back in with the pinion gear. We use this silicon grease, duathlon silicon, just small amounts as per normal. You've probably seen me do this before, but this grease goes on the gear face only, and usually just on the main gear, because that will transfer from there to the pinion gear, so the pinion gear will pick up its lubrication directly from the main gear. This is a little bit repetitive, I know, but it's just part of the process. These little pots, they're about, I don't know, about 20 bucks each. Last for a long time though. So, for a little pot sounds like a lot, but a small amount goes a long way. And that just slides in to the other bearing, marries up with the pinion gear, and we just check for full range of motion. sure nothing's catching, hung up, or otherwise going to be a problem. Slot that bearing on there, and that's about it. Then in with the bale trip ramp. This goes in at this stage because once you put this side on, you can't get that in, and don't ask me how I know, but if you don't put that in and you go ahead and assemble the reel and find that it's got to go in later, that then means that you've got to disassemble the reel again to put that ramp in. So don't forget to put that in. Don't ask me how I know, because it's a secret. These little screws here, 3 of them are the same. One down on the bottom right side of it there, as you're looking at it, is slightly smaller. So that has its own location. Next goes on this bale friction ring, which is just a press on. Nothing really to tell here except that it needs to be located completely in its groove down the bottom there. Yeah, that's what it spins obviously, as you can see there, and it just gets pressed on by the bale trip arm, and just provides friction to stop the spool from spinning. In with the rotor seat, on with the rotor. Make sure she's free, and I'm sure you can see that the rotor nut's going on. Lefty tighty, left hand thread, thanks Shimano. Some are, some aren't. I've just done a big bunch of bait runners, new ones, and they all have right hand thread on their rotor nuts. So Shimano just like to mix it up a little bit, make sure everyone's paying attention. This is the no, wait a minute. First we've got to put in a put on the rotor retaining cap. That's a seal. That's just a rubber seal. That's pretty much all the waterproofing these have on them. Try and get those little screw holes to line up, which magically they do on this occasion. They don't always, but this time they do. In with the screws. These are just these are self tappers, so they don't need any Loctite or anything like that on. They just need to be firm. Don't sort of over tight them, otherwise they'll cause some chaos. Handle screw cap or dust cap just goes on firmly, and now for the rear protector. A little bit of grease as a barrier just on that body joint there, and just to provide a bit of a barrier for the salt, because as I've said before many times, this rear protector area is a salt trap, a water trap. So any sort of barrier you can have in there that's not excessive, but just a barrier is going to be a win. Next time it comes off, it may have a little sand attached to it or a bit of salt attached to it, but you just give it a wipe off with a tissue or something, and it'll be as good as new. It won't be corroded, which is really what you want. rear protector, so it just sits there. Doesn't do a great deal except look pretty. A single tiny little screw there. I think we'll need the blue, the hex head one. So again, Shimano mixing it up for us. And that's good. So now we'll chuck the handle in, and when I say chuck, I mean put it in very carefully, because it's very easy to cross thread that, and if you do that you're in a world of hurt. So that's nice now. If you remember back to the start, it would barely even turn there because it was locked up through the anti-reverse clutch area. Freedom of movement, and we'll put on the spool support, which has to go on in a particular way, that way. And that's us fast approaching the end of this rebuild or recondition. In goes this little tiny little grub screw. Just be careful not to over tighten this, because it's so small you will strip the threads out on it, and that would be another bad day. There's adjusting shims just to adjust the spool height for line lay, and away she goes. Auto bail trip works. I try and get people not to use the auto bail trip if they don't actually have to, because it's maybe that's a thing for another video, but it's a whole lot of stress on your reel that you don't really need. Just flip it over by hand, or use the auto trip, but your reel will last a lot longer. Drag seems good, and that's it. I think we're done, trendsetters. Thanks for watching, and like and subscribe if you can.